Houston. I'm pleased to be joined today by Kathryn Kramer, Diamond Award winner with Howard Hanna. Kathryn, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for it. I was doing a little show prep. I like to do that every now and then. And I noticed that you got into business 6/15/2006. So for those that are newer agents, let's just say that was like you and I being on the Titanic, and we think we see an iceberg, but we're not sure. And we're all having a good time. And then it turns out that was an iceberg. So that was kind of how that went for me. And I'm sure for you too.
Absolutely. It was, I caught the tail end of the go-go days from that period in time, and then had to really build my career in the fallout that, was after that.
That's right.
Of really pounding the pavement and figuring out how to work and create a business in a tough market. That's
right. And I think there's some similarities between today's market and that market. Just there's different problems. Like, back then it was like everybody's getting foreclosed on at short sales. And now it's like, well, nobody wants to sell their house because they're sitting on 2.25% interest rates. So it's different in that regard, but still there's some similarities there. But
go ahead.
I was going to say, but before we hop into that, we need to give everybody kind of the backstory on before you got into the real estate game. So let's go and start there. Tell me a little bit about kind of like, are you local to the area that you sell in now? How did you get into real estate?
I am born and raised here in Norfolk, Virginia, coastal Virginia area. Did a brief stint in Philly for college, lived in New York City for a little bit, South Florida, and a little bit out in Colorado right post-college, being a ski bum.
So what was your favorite stop? So you hit New York, Florida, and Colorado. So, I mean, that's not bad, some not bad territory then.
Yeah, no, I think I got to say Colorado just because that was such a special time in my life to be, nothing, no roots anywhere, no responsibility, not having entered the rat race. Was just sort of a special time to kind of enjoy life and take that break.
Yep. I think for a lot of times in this business, because it is so demanding of our mind in a lot of ways, it's like you can try to turn it off. What's going on with the Johnson appraisal? I hope that comes in okay, but it's for like, I don't know about you, but for those at kind of the upper echelon, it's kind of hard to turn that off. I can't just walk away, right? It's like I enjoyed my job at Starbucks because when I left there, I didn't have to think about it the rest of the day. And that's how I like that part of it. But it's got its pluses and minuses for what we do.
Yeah, Tanner, you're so right. It really it becomes all encompassing. And that was something that took me a long time to kind of wrap my head around, how to set boundaries. And because I don't sit still well. So I'm like but the wheels are always turning. I mean, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, what about, but I think there are, policies and tools and techniques that, every agent should adapt to really help manage that, because otherwise, this job will just eat you up.
That's for sure. And so, all right. So you're a ski bum in Colorado, and then you decide. Now, was that like, okay, I'm there now, I'm moving back, or did you have kind of an intermediate spot before you moved back? Tell me about that transition.
That was come back home. It was sort of, we reached a point. I think we kind of had a conversation with my group of people out there that was like, if we don't leave now, we're going to be here in 10 years. So everybody got to go and get on with their life. Appreciative of what the time that we had, but coming home was always a priority to me.
Gotcha. Okay. So you arrived back in the Norfolk area, and now had you had real estate in your bones growing up, or was this like, hey, I should try real estate, or how did that go?
Kind of. My father did some development. My mom was an architect, so kind of, houses, real estate was sort of in the blood.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked for a commercial real estate company. And that was, I was at the time, as people who were in the market 2006 or 5, was a huge condo conversion. So my job was really working on site, helping facilitate a large high-end apartment complex into condos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was doing, on site, and I was making, design boards and that kind of thing, and was working with the agents that were selling them. And I felt like I was doing a lot of work and they were making a lot more money. So that was when that kind of ended. I figured that was a natural place for me to go.
Interesting. Okay. So when you look back on it now, was like, what was the highest price condo? And so so just to make sure I understand. So these are converting from people are paying $2,000 a month rent or whatever they were paying. And now they've decided they're going to flip this into sellable condos. And then you have to come in and it's like, all right, well, this needs to be redecorated and repainted and this is updated and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. They, in fact, they were selling for, 250,000. And, in fact, it was just the past few years that they kind of got back to that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, it really, they took a hit, everybody was converting condos and getting, crazy prices and, they were hit hard by the decline.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're at that job and then you decide, all right, what is the transition? How did you go, you know what, I'm going to get into real estate as a realtor. So how did that evolution go?
That's actually a funny story. So my sister-in-law now was a real estate agent in California.
Okay.
And I knew her very casually at the time. And we were out at a dinner with a bunch of people and, we sat next to each other. And I was telling her I was thinking of getting my license and going into commercial real estate. And she said, you have to go into residential. And I said, okay. And I did. And she ended up coming back from California. We were business partners for a while, became very close friends. And she ended up marrying my brother.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Good thing that team or that relationship worked out okay then.
Right. And good thing we sat together next to each other at that dinner.
That's right, for sure. So, well, that's interesting. So there's obviously pluses to commercial side, but was it a tough choice for you or just like, once you kind of look at the math a little bit, maybe, yeah, you can make a lot on commercial, but it does take a while.
Well, in hindsight, it ended up being a fantastic decision because the commercial market really suffered. People still needed a place to live. I mean, that won't go anywhere. No matter what happens, but I think the commercial side was hit a lot harder. So, my conversation over a margarita turned out to be a 18-year career path.
Well, sometimes the best way to do it. So it worked out great. So, all right. So you go and you decide to get your real estate license. Now, have you always been Howard Hanna? Did you interview other spots? Like, how did that go for you?
I did 10-year, almost maybe. Yeah, about 10 years at another company.
Okay.
At the time, our market was really a bunch of the smaller mom and pop shops. There weren't, that many of the really big players that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been a series of other companies coming to the area and sort of buying those out. But I made a switch a few years back. It was sort of just the right timing for me to do something different. And, I guess a common theme in my career is that I, was just sort of losing steam. I kind of lost the love for it. And I just knew that I needed to just
shake something up. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I completely understand that. So when we come back, I want to talk about that first year in business for you because you walked in at basically, again, the tail end of if it's about to fall apart, and now you have to hustle to do it. And that's just how it went. So we'll be right back with Kathryn Kramer. Break. Do you have clients considering new construction, looking for a builder that takes pride in their work and delivers a beautiful home? If so, I'm excited to tell you about Sona Homes located in Fredericksburg. If you haven't visited a new Sona home yet, reach out to my friend and sales manager, Adarsh Parbadia, at 540-419-3164. Adarsh will be able to answer all your questions about Sona Homes and make it a great experience for your clients. Again, that is Adarsh Parbadia with Sona Homes at 540-419-3164. Make sure you tell them Tanner sent you. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. So, Kathryn, you got in the business in the 2006 timeframe, and I had mentioned that I opened Bayfield Homeloans in October of 2006. So I remember at that time, it had to be very similar for you because now I'm off on my own. I'm running my own company with just me. And it's like things are going along and then suddenly they're not. So you walk in the door in June of 2006 and give me your like, all right, here were my first 4 months of being a realtor. Like, what did you do? How did you start getting business? What was your first transaction? Stuff like that.
I think my first transaction was actually for a family member. It was very small, very inexpensive investment property. And
Nice.
I will never forget, for some reason, and I wish I could remember it all, we took out all the windows. Because I think the buyer was planning on replacing them, and for some reason that was a thing, and I didn't even know that would be an issue. The appraiser got there and was like, "Listen, I need windows."
You're like, really? Like all of them?
I thought it was as is. I said, "Well, it is." They said it has to be livable and lendable. Oh, okay. And I think the buyer ended up putting them in before closing, and we could go ahead and close. But that was kind of like, eeps, I have a lot to learn.
You're right. Well, you didn't. Who are you going to ask that like to? Like, all right, I know this part of the contract. I need to know that, but just out of curiosity, not for me, but for someone else. Can I take out all the windows? I mean, can they take out all the windows? Right? They're like, what are you, crazy? No. So I mean, it's just stuff like that you learn in like your first transaction that you'll never forget. So okay, so it's you're helping a family member, and so it's you're getting your reps of like, okay, how do we, price point is this, and we're going to go look at these houses, and just tell me about your general experience on it. Was it like they looked at 2 houses and I was good and that was it? And
well, that was on the sales side.
on the sales side. Okay.
So yeah. So, and there were 2 properties right near each other. So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of went into it, and I had, a lot of help from my former associate broker and broker kind of, holding my hand. And, every time I'd walk into one of their offices, they'd say, "Oh goodness, what is it now?" It was like I had like, background, like ominous background music. And I'm like,
Right.
He finally said to me, he's like, "I don't know if this says anything about you, but all of your deals seem to be really off the wall and convoluted." So, but that was part of the learning process.
It's funny how that works, because I've had loan officers in the past that work for me, and it's like the first 4 deals are just the weirdest things I've never heard of before and I've never seen again, but they happen to new people. And then I'm sure like you have the same experience. Like you had things in the beginning, like I haven't run into this in 15 years. I remember how to do it, but that was a long time ago. So
yeah, and every deal is different. Everyone has their own set of problems and goals, and you just all that experience, I think, helps you be able to navigate those issues successfully.
Yep, makes sense. So okay, so your first now how do you start getting the word out there? Like, are you doing kind of like open houses every weekend? But you're local to the area, so you need to let people know. There's no Facebook. You're like, how does that go?
The first step for me was really building my sphere of influence,
Okay.
And just making a spreadsheet of all of the people that, old neighbors, family friends, doctors, dentists, just basically had a list that was, created by someone else, put all of these people in there. We actually, sent out like a paper announcement, put all those in there. And I think that people really want to see you succeed. I think that we get down on ourselves, but people out there really want to support you.
Yeah.
And I mean, all of those, sending out postcards and getting other listings from them, and doing print. We used to do advertisements in the newspaper, and oh my gosh, I sound so old.
I remember those days. I mean, you know what? Again, we talk a little bit offline. Just I think a lot of the old school ways still stand the test of time, because everybody's so bombarded with spam calls and emails and Facebook ads or whatever. But it's like you get something in your hand, it's like you have to look at it. You got that person's attention for 15, 20 seconds or longer. Mm-hmm. So when you did you get any feedback, phone calls, people reaching out to you saying, "Hey, I got your letter. I'm not looking to buy right now, but if anybody comes up, I'm definitely going to keep you in mind"?
Absolutely. And back then we also sitting on duty was a big thing to feel, people would call the office. So, I mean, I just took every single duty opportunity that I could take. And a lot of my business really started that way. People either walk-ins or people calling and saying, I'm looking to buy a house in the area. And I was the one who, fielded the phone call and kind of built a business that way.
Do you feel that we have a version of, because I've had many successful agents like yourself who have been doing it a while, and, they did have the duty desk where it's like, people come in for that. Do we have a version of that now for agents, or is that really kind of like open houses that's
I think
our version?
Open houses would be the closest thing to that.
Okay.
But I think social media, I don't think people really call an office anymore. They call a friend, they go online, they join a Facebook group for housing in the area. So, and for some agents, I think that if you continually monitor those and comment on those and engage with those people, that can be a very successful path to build.
So that's almost kind of like your, because let's talk about when you were on the duty desk. So it's basically, was it 2-hour shifts, 3-hour shifts, something like that?
I think it was 2.5 actually, but something like that.
Okay, so you're there, and it's like you could be reading a book for the 30 minutes before somebody'd come in. I mean, that you're trying to focus on, well, how am I going to generate a business? But at some point, you're like, all right, well, it's 4:00 on a Friday afternoon. There's nobody calling me when, whatever. But it seems like during that time, if you have a similar block of time where for these 3 hours a day, which would have been my duty desk time, I am on social, I am making these posts, I am responding to these posts. That's changed the game a little bit, but it's the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, blocking that time and engaging with the consumer, won't go anywhere. You have to be, and I think a lot of people, put content out, but where they fall short on that is really responding and engaging and providing value to people that are already out there.
Yeah.
So there are all of these different groups where people are asking questions and looking for referrals. And, I think that you can to not just focus on your page, but focus on the other ones that are out there and providing value. Everybody can say, pick me, this is why I'm the best. But, people have a question and you providing, a high quality answer that really helps them. They say, yeah, then that's somebody who I want to work with.
That's going to cut through it. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is too, so if you're doing, let's say you're touring neighborhoods or houses for people, then that's another version of a desk duty that you can be doing to get that social media presence out there. Now, so you're in the beginning, you're doing the desk duty. Now, how about open houses? Are you're rocking those every Saturday and Sunday? Are you making sure you're at them? How's that go?
Yeah, I absolutely would. And I always, well, until recently when things sell in 3 days, but when I was marketing a property, I would put my open house time on there to drive traffic in there. So I'd have, a postcard that went to the entire neighborhood that said, come see this in person on this date. And that really had a much higher success rate than just, putting it on, wherever it is. Whether it was in the newspaper or on your social media, right. But have that people say, oh yeah, I have a friend that wants to be in this neighborhood, come by the open house. So that was always important for me to have a call to action, to have a way that was, people, especially now, are hesitant to pick up the phone. None of us want to have an in-person conversation, but someone being able to walk through, at low stakes, was a really nice conversion tool. And then they'd meet me and get comfortable with me. I always would try to focus on a specific area. I think for someone who's especially holding, who may not have their own listings, who's trying to build a business, don't do 5 open houses all over the market. Pick a neighborhood, because you'll start seeing the same people, and that will really start, building you as the neighborhood expert. And I think that's a much better use of your time than, who has something for me to hold open. I'll go, to this city and this city and this neighborhood and this neighborhood. Really, you want to start seeing the same faces. You want people to get comfortable with you. That's
a great tip. And I really like that. And, the other thing is too, like if I walk into an open house and you had just pulled up the address and you're sitting in the open house and I ask you about the neighborhood and you're like deer in the headlights look and it's got houses and streets and there's a few lights out there. I mean, people are going to see through that. Whereas if you're like, yeah, well, this is my third open house in this neighborhood this month, and I can tell you that it's definitely a hopping place and da 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 da. And people will pick up on that as well. Like, oh wow, you know your stuff in here for sure. And like you said, what a great way to potentially meet potential listers. So
Yeah.
I like
Well,
that. That's
and I
a good
think
tip.
another tip about that I would throw out there is it takes 2 seconds, but print all the listings and the sales in that neighborhood. I mean,
Nice.
you want
Okay.
to be looking on your phone, being like, oh, here's one down the street. If you have it, well, here's everything that's available in the neighborhood. If this one doesn't work for you, like I'll be out of here in an hour. I'd be happy to show you any of these.
Yeah.
It takes very little time, and people, can really appreciate, okay, yeah, this one isn't quite right, but how about the one over there? I'm already here.
Right, exactly. Well, those are a couple great points right there. Now, when you look back on it, are there some things that do you still do today when you're doing an open that you did back then that were successful? I mean, I'm sure you're not going to say, yeah, I've closed $20 million off open houses, but you're probably going to tell me you've gotten at least a couple buyers of them, sellers. So what were some of the things you picked up on them over the years?
I think just a little bit of preparation is key, just because then you want to position yourself as the neighborhood expert. I mean, that's how we continue to provide value to our clients. So if you know what's going on in the neighborhood, then I think that'll be hugely helpful for you. Just being attentive, not, I'm very not salesy, I'm like, I'm here, I can answer any questions, tell me the good, bad, the ugly. It's not my house. You won't offend me.
Right.
And really, asking the questions. And I think, again, we often as realtors, try to stand up on a soapbox, but, people want to be heard, if they say, well, no, I really, need an extra bedroom. And you say, well, yeah.
Are you sure you can convert this closet right here? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly. Don't oversell it. Just say, that's great. I get it. Like, let me, hear some other options that could work for you.
well, I like the part where if they make a comment like that, you already have the listings that are in the neighborhood. So you've identified that you like the neighborhood and like, hey, let's go look at this one down the street. Or you've identified you like the neighborhood, but you don't have the bedroom count. I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and make sure that I set you up for a drip so that it's when this comes available, you and I are looking at it the first thing, and I will keep my ears to the ground that if I hear of one coming up, since I have hosted 3 open houses in here, I want to let you know first. And now you're really developing that, like, what do you do for me as an agent that person's like, oh, maybe I should use them versus, somebody sent me from somewhere else or whatever.
Yeah, I coach some of the agents that work with me and say, look, your first priority is sitting down right there and writing an offer on it. I mean, that is best case scenario. You love it, hey, it's fine. I'll do this right now, or give me 30 minutes and come back and we can sign it, whatever. If it's not the right fit for them, the next priority would be to getting another meeting that you want to say, okay, this isn't right, but can you come back this afternoon and I can show you these? Is there another day this week that works for you to show these? Yeah. And then third level of that, if they're, you are met with some hesitancy on that, is to set up a drip campaign and say, well, let me just, keep you on a ticker and show you what comes up. And if something looks interesting, I'm available and ready, willing, and able to show it to you.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So, now give me kind of the overview of your first year. So you were holding a lot of open houses, you're doing the desk duty, you're working with some initial clients. What else are you, what seeds are you planning to start, like, all right, this is my career now. I'm going to start seeing the benefit from these, and it could be 3 years, 5 years. What were you doing during that first year?
Well, one of the things that I did, and this was actually with my sister-in-law, was we went around to a bunch of the high-end apartment buildings, and I don't know if we didn't have the same tax record access, or maybe some of them didn't print, the apartment numbers on them, or I can't remember exactly why, but we would tour these complexes and make notes of how they numbered their units. And we would send out postcards and say, hey, did you know for this amount, you can buy this much house? We're having a first time home buyer seminar, and we'd, pick a local watering hole and, buy a round of drinks for everyone. And we'd have, a lender or a financial planner or an attorney or, whatever, aspect of the transaction there with us, where we would just have a conversation with people and show them the steps and show them how accessible it really could be.
I love that idea. And it's interesting because again, we're talking about the time frame that you and I were going through this. So it's not like we had clients just jumping into your car on a regular. It's like we have to go find people, right? And so some of the things that I'm hearing from you, I remember a book called Guerrilla Marketing. And I don't know if that's kind of where, if you've thought about that too, but just like these different ideas of like, how can we find a client? How can we, use this information to help us find somebody? And I love that idea of being able to host the first time home buyer seminar there. It's like, look, you're already paying $2,000 a month. Why don't you put it in a house, right? So makes sense.
And that was a great way to get in front of people.
Exactly. And then you're developing your skills, right? It's like we can role play all we want, but we have to have some live bullets at some point to what are they going to ask me? What are some of the things that I'm going to see over and over in my career? And I love that. Now, if you have 100 agents in front of you right now and they're like, all right, how do I as a first year agent get to the level that you're at? And what do I need to be doing as a first year agent to do it? What are you going to tell them?
I think I would say that your message gets diluted when you try to do too much over too broad of a spectrum. I would say, if you want to do mailers, then do mailers, but don't just do one. Plan to do, a series of them. You want to pick one neighborhood, presumably, ideally where you live and you can interact with people. But if there's another neighborhood that's attractive, it doesn't really matter. But really, send the mailers. Do the open houses, kind of focus on a more narrow market rather than diluting yourself too much. If you want to do, we did expired letters. We have a buyer looking in this neighborhood and send a letter to, if you're thinking about selling, call me. But really trying to focus your efforts on an area and a process that's very finite. Like, just don't say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, because then it won't have any impact.
That's a great point. Like, pick one and stick with it. If and give it time to have a chance. And if you don't, then you can't just kind of go, well, that didn't work, and move on to the next one. Like, you have to put in the work on it.
We did door hangers, and we would get with a couple like local restaurants and things, and hire college kids to go stick them on everyone's door, and have 10% off your meal at this restaurant and 10% off your landscaping at this company. And again, making sure that what you're doing is providing value to people.
Yep. I love that. Now, all right. So my favorite question kind of in your first year, like your initial years, is like, can you think of a bold move that you made that resulted in a transaction for you, or you met an investor, or just something kind of out of the blue? Like, if I do not do X, I do not get Y.
I think that first time home buyer list would be a real good answer to that. I mean, it was kind of crazy we literally drove around for hours on end laughing and listening to music and we kind of felt bad, we were going after these apartments, tenants, but that was really something that took a lot of time and energy, and had a pretty good conversion rate.
Right. And again, in the beginning, it's like, well, how do I develop a client list? Well, you have to work for it, right? There's no magic bullet. And so you doing those events, think how many past clients came from there, past sales, they told their friends. So it was this initial investment of time, effort, and energy that you were then able to quantify over and around, just like, here's how much that did. So that's a great idea. Do you have anything else on this segment that if you're giving here's a good one for you? What was the best piece of advice you got as a new agent that you really think about still to today?
If you can smell it, you can't sell it.
Solid.
I would say maybe don't buy trouble. I think that we naturally, your mind goes to all the ways that things can go wrong and all the problems that can arise.
Yeah.
But sometimes just, focusing on the present and not worrying about all the bad outcomes is, the best peace of mind you can have.
Yeah, and it really goes back to making a bold move. Like, if you get paralyzed just thinking like, oh my gosh, if I do this, then this could go wrong and this could happen. Like, no, just go for it. That's
Exactly.
just
Just
what you got to do. So,
Mhm.
well, perfect. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about your pillars of business now and your trajectory. Like I said that, right? From where that first year to now. We'll be right back with Kathryn Kramer. Break. Well, welcome back, everyone. Okay. So, Kathryn, we're going to talk about business now, right? So you went through a shift. I think it's fair to say we're going through a shift, and your numbers are still amazing, but everybody's kind of feeling it's a little bit more difficult than it was 2 years ago. That said, though, I'd like to hear about kind of what you're doing right now to generate new clients. I'd like to hear about your team breakdown and what were the things involved as far as like, okay, I made this decision however many years ago to start doing this and having help. Tell me about your transition there.
Well, for me, it started right before the market went crazy, right before COVID, which was, a stroke of good luck because and maybe unfortunately for them, it was a very hard time to be a buyer's agent, but I had really just reached a breaking point. I have a big family and I was struggling managing my, all of my obligations. And I said, I'm either going to have to get out or I'm going to have to find a new way to do this.
Yeah.
I think even before that, I think what was really one eye opener for me is I have a friend that was sort of a business coach and, I think we were at a wedding and he said to me, you just look exhausted. He said, what is going on? And and basically what his, snapshot of my business was, that I wouldn't turn down a client. I wouldn't turn down a deal. I was doing it all myself. And he said, you need to be more intentional about who you work with. He said, and I said, no, but I need, it was sort of this, like, I need to take it all or there's going to be nothing left.
Right.
And I would end up putting time, money, and energy into clients that were never going to buy something, that were not going to be committed to me and committed to the process, and realizing that it was okay to say no and to prioritize, my family, my mental health, and true to form. I mean, he was right. My business, by me being more selective, was not hurt. It actually increased because I could spend that time on people that were actually going to convert.
Do you feel like, I think because a lot of agents listening to this, they probably have felt the same way, right? It's like, oh, if I turn this client down, well, then, then next thing I know, they're going to buy a $10 million house. And I would have missed out on that. And even though we looked for the last 9 weekends and they couldn't find anything, or supposedly, or there was always something wrong with the house or whatever their situation is, right? But when you first turned, I don't know if turned down is the right way, but you first were like, you know what, I'm going to pass on working with that particular situation. And did it just become easier? Like maybe the first one was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that, and business is going to die. And it's like, actually it didn't. And I, because I didn't waste my time on that, I picked up 3 more clients or whatever.
Well, I think the way that we sort of quantified it was that I would deal with somebody who had either an unreasonable person or unreasonable expectations, but never both. But you said something that I think I want to just touch on while we're there is, I heard recently that unmet expectations are the source of all conflict. And I thought that was really poignant and sort of eye-opening, that you have to set the right expectations, whether it's for your assistant, whether it's for your clients, whether, whatever it is. Because people can get mad that a property hasn't sold, but did you tell them that this was the average market time? Did you tell them that this was the range and prices they could expect? That it's not necessarily going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And really setting those expectations. It works, even on a personal level. You're not mad at your children because their room is messy. You're mad at your children because you had an expectation that either it would be clean or that they would clean it. And that's what's so frustrating. And I think that was really eye-opening to me, to make sure that you're setting the right expectations for people.
That's such a great point. And that's, as we have the shift in the market, think about how conversations are changing on listing appointments now, right? Before you go in, you're just like, this will sell and you're going to get top dollar.
Number, right. It's an auction. Like that's what I would say to clients. I said, I'm waiting for someone to let me to list a property for $1 because it's going to be an auction and it's going to go wherever it goes. But we're having to get back to a time where pricing matters, marketing matters. I had a first listing that didn't sell in the first weekend, and I was like, what's happening? And it was like, okay, go back to how things were. This is the anomaly. What we've seen for the past 3 years is the anomaly.
Yep.
That a little bit of market time and waiting for the right buyer is something that we've had to deal with for most of the real estate, transaction time.
So how do you level set the expectations now for a client when, that, because okay, here's how I want to put it. Do you sense when I'm meeting with you that you're like, all right, these guys are reasonable. So I don't need to sugarcoat this. So give me like 2 versions of that. If they're like past clients of yours, is it a different conversation versus if it's like a referral from somebody or you picked up a listing from another angle? How does that go?
I treat every deal the same. Sometimes even more thorough with people who are a friend or someone closer, which is real. Most people, I can tell that, nobody wants to hear your opinion, but people will respond to facts. Sure that your numbers and you can manipulate the data to show them. I mean, absorption rates were something that were hammered into me at many years ago that are so relevant. And now most of our MLSs actually will calculate them for you, by you just putting in the data. But to say, listen, we 5 houses have sold, and we have 10 that are active. So, there's 2 months in there that should absorb all the current inventory. I remember running numbers for a client, and I did that, and it was 36 months of inventory in
Holy
there.
cow.
And they looked at me. And they were investors, but they looked at me and said, "Why didn't our previous agent tell us this?" And they said, "Well, we need to reduce the price to move it." And just by me giving them the data, giving them the information, they made the decision.
Yeah.
Not me telling us, reduce the price. It's not selling. On the flip side of that, I've had something that was a client that was like, I think we need to reduce the price. I think, why isn't it selling? And I ran that data and I said, listen, it's not just you that's not selling. Nobody's selling, so maybe we have to be a little bit more patient, hunker down for the longer term and wait for someone because our pricing isn't off.
Yeah. It's such an important point, and it's interesting how this is going to shake people out again, right? Because if you go in and you have the mindset of like, oh, this is going to sell, and then you haven't set those expectations, well, guess what? You're when that listing doesn't sell, there's going to be somebody right behind you who's going to be like, I'm making sure when I walk in the door with these people that expired listing that I'm telling them what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right off the gate.
And I think that we've been able to be lazy with our pricing and with our data. Because of how everything's been moving. I mean, I've had more clients recently that have disagreed with my pricing, saying I'm too high. They're like, no way my house is worth that.
Wow.
I can't believe that you think you can get that. And often we exceeded it.
Yeah.
But really looking at that data and knowing how to analyze it is going to become paramount to make people survive in a changing market.
Super smart. I love that. Okay. So how are we going about getting a new listing right now? And then we'll go into how we're going to get a new buyer right now. So what are some of the things you're doing right now? I'm, sort of a different animal at this point from a lot of the newer agents, because most of my business is coming from referrals and past clients, word of mouth. So very fortunate that after, kind of busting my chops for almost 2 decades, that now it kind of comes to me. But I remember my first year, in the business with my broker meeting, analyzing where all your leads came from. He said, and I don't remember the exact ratios, but he said almost all of your business has come from organic. Like you met them, you sat duty, you met them at an open house, they came to a seminar. He said, when your sphere starts buying houses, because I was young, I was 24, then your business is just going to skyrocket. Yeah.
But yeah, so now, like I said, it's really referrals and word of mouth. But I just recently had a client that came to me that said, hey, we've written 4 offers on your listing. So, we're our agent moved out of the way, but we want to work with you. You're the one who has all the inventory we want, and we need to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for people just starting out, it's going to be a little bit more effort. You have to be willing to make it.
For sure. So when you now for the same thing, for if you're finding a buyer, then it's basically like, and let's go into a little bit more of how are you staying in front of your past clients to make sure that we're continuing to have those opportunities for referrals and recommendations.
Social media has been really pivotal for me, because everybody kind of follows me and then sort of engages, and that makes things a lot easier, that you can, it sort of runs itself. They see I'm actively selling, they see the new listings. We always, when I put on a new listing, I try to make sure that is, the day of the listing, like it's up there first. And I can't tell you how many agents and clients and, prospective buyers call me and say, what's this new listing? What's this new listing? It's not the MLS, and of course it has to come on the same day. I'm not trying to do anything that's not above board, but really being that resource for people, to know that I can be a source of information and really, give them a leg up. Except, for people who just sit back and wait for things to kind of drip through.
Right. How are you now? Are you reaching out, phone call, past client events? Tell me a little bit about kind of like the overall.
I've done past client events before. I'm actually getting ready to do one in the early stages of planning it. I think that's a great way to engage with people and to say that you appreciate them. I mean, like my business is solely based on what comes to me, and if I can continue to be a source of information and entertainment and, community, then I think that really helps show that, I am somebody that people want to work with.
Yeah, it makes sense. When you're looking at your pillars now, so is there any part, here's a good question for you. Have you done some advertisements either now or in the past that you found that had benefit? Are you dusting off some of the playbooks from, when you got in, that you're looking at to see how you could kind of do those again that you had success with?
So I tell all my clients, and I'm probably one of the few agents that has done this, but I haven't really changed my marketing strategy even in this time. And I think that that's really helped set me apart, because so many people aren't doing these things that it actually has cut down on all the static and, chatter that's out there, because you're not seeing a lot of people. But I have a very consistent, and this is one of the things that my sales and marketing coordinator does on every single listing, that, is high quality flyers that go outside and inside the property, a direct mail piece, which unfortunately, usually the properties have been sold before it hits a mailbox.
Right.
Unless I can miraculously get someone who's ready 2 weeks in advance for pictures and then, wait, but that piece still goes out. And it links to a customized URL that has a website that has a floor plan, a 3D tour, the open house date. So all of that information, and all of that marketing that I've never let up on.
And it's interesting how that's going to start paying dividends now, right? Because it's like if this sits through a weekend or 2 weekends, and now we're having the open house, and they can already see the pictures, and then what else you're doing in the neighborhood to announce the open house. It's just an opportunity to get more buyers and more business and sellers too. So it makes all the sense in the world.
And I think that having a consistent brand image is really important. I worked briefly for a marketing company in New York, and that was one of the big takeaways. I also, way back in college, had, read a book for one of my classes that was, I think, marketing brand image or something like that, and just talked about think about it. Like, what is your brand? What does it mean to you? What are you going to do that sets it apart and makes it unique? And I sort of leaned into, it's very clean, very modern, kind of fun, that really reflects me and my properties in the right way.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else you want to pass along in this segment? Kind of like when you're looking at the 1,000-foot overview of your business right now, maybe some areas that you're looking to improve on, some areas that you feel you've really nailed that other agents should really invest in.
Video is the big one. That's a goal of mine at the moment. That's where everybody's going. We all hear it. We all have to get over. When I graduated high school, they got rid of the superlatives, but they did, where will you be in 30 years? and mine was the voice of a talking doll. And so, I hate hearing my voice on video. I feel like I make all these weird faces and, bumble through my words, but we just have to get over it, and we have to be authentic. And, that's where all of the data is showing that people want to see you, and they want to know you, and they want to hear you.
Yeah.
So to go from, back when I started, where I would spend, an ridiculous amount of time writing 4 lines of copy for a newspaper to announce my new property or my new open house, to now having just video everywhere. I mean, it's really, the technology has evolved, and we got to get on board.
Well, that too. And you just go on Chat GPT and you're like, right, give me a paragraph and a half on 1129, whatever. And they're just like, perfect. Yeah. We'll use that. And so it definitely makes that part a little bit different. But the video part, I everybody says that, and you really just have to do it. And a lot of times it's just a matter of just giving your first efforts. They're not going to be great. You just have to accept it, and you just got to keep at it. Consistency, which is a great message. Mm-hmm. Now, when we come back, I want to hear some good stories. And then also we're going to talk about kind of like your go-to motto. So we'll be right back with Kathryn Kramer. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, Kathryn, this is new segment. It might as well be called Story Time, because if I'm being honest, this is my favorite part about hearing like life of agents and just, crazy transactions and just funny stories that happen on a regular. But I'd like to start off with something that I've been thinking a lot about, because I think right now motivation is important, right? How do I get myself engaged to do what we need to do? Whether it's I need to call my past clients, I need to reach out to agents, I need to go to this presentation that I have to give. I want to be engaged and I want to be ready to go. And one of the things I've thought about is like your personal motto, something that is special to you, that you would, if you were walking out for a listing appointment you really want to get, like you slap it, right? You're like, that's right, I got this. And my reference point is the movie Rudy and Notre Dame football. So Notre Dame football charged out on the field, and they have a sign that they hit, play like a champion today. So what is your play like a champion today? Some version of that.
I love this question. I think I would go with be obsessed or be average.
Wow. Okay.
I think that, you have to be all in. You have to, whatever your goal is, being obsessed on achieving that. And that can be big or small. That can be, being the best real estate agent in the market. That can be, doing one more deal than you did last year. I mean, whatever your goals are, and really just jumping in feet first and going for it. I mean, I think, our biggest hurdle is our own fears and our own inhibitions, and you just have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed with getting that listing, or getting a property looking the best, or getting in front of 10 more potential clients. Like whatever it is, you have to make that your focus. I heard one place, and I don't know where it is, and I don't know who said it, I don't really know if it's accurate, but if you focus on something for 18 minutes a day, you'll be better than 90% of the people that are out there. And I think that, that just shows that, it doesn't need to be a huge, you don't need to time block 2.5 hours, just pick 20 minutes and do something every day. And I think the same, I mean, you could apply it to sports for our children. You can apply it to, your business. You can apply it to so many different factors. That, small steps done consistently and thoroughly will absolutely set you apart.
I love that one. I haven't heard anything like that before, and I feel like that's going to go on my wall, right? Like that is awesome, because that's the way the mindset has got to be right now. You and I experienced the hardest time in real estate. Like there wasn't anything comparable before. There wasn't anything. It's a little bit tougher now, but it is not the same. I can just say that bluntly for those that are listening. But this is still going to wipe out a lot of folks. There's a lot of lenders getting out of the business. There's a lot of agents that are not going to renew. And you have to make a decision. Are you going to go for it? And whatever that go for it is for you, you got to do it. Because if not, this isn't like going to turn around tomorrow.
Mm-mm. I know. I think in fact, it'll definitely get worse before it gets better. I don't think, in our market, pricing is still strong, but the number of transactions is going down.
Yep.
So that means more agents fighting for every deal, and you have to be a part of that fight.
And that's all across the state. I mean, I work Northern Virginia all the way down here to Hampton Roads. There's less inventory, and that's just how it is. So everybody that's listening, and I would think most of the listening audience to Virginia's for Realtors are committed agents who want to succeed, and they're looking for something to help them. And that's the mindset we just got to have: be obsessed or be average right now. So I love that. Okay, now I also love stories about whether it's scary or funny. So let me go and read to you my question, and then you kind of take in the direction you would like. So, do you have a funny or scary story to share about either a showing, a transaction, a client? You name it. The floor is yours.
Gosh, I think I could write a book on this topic. I'll start. I think one of the scariest was there was a funeral home across the street from a house that I used to live in. And before they started the renovations, the caretaker took me through the house, which was beautiful. It is one of my favorite properties out there. But at the time, they still had, the tables in the basement, and
wow.
the chimney for the crematorium and all the things. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
But that was pretty spooky. But it is a beautiful property, and all those past stories are long gone. But it was funny to see it before it was renovated, and it still had a little a
little heebie-jeebies in it now. And I'm sure there's a family in there now. Do you have to disclose anything like that on a listing?
No, in fact, we can't. I mean, you're not allowed to weigh in on if somebody has passed away or anything like that. That's
gotcha. Oh boy. Yeah, that's that would definitely be one I would not add to my list just cuz, and beautiful or not, but great point. Okay, next one.
I have another scary one, and this is actually a personal story.
Oh boy.
A little bit different scary, not any paranormal activity, but my oldest daughter, I have 5 children. My oldest daughter was on the ski team in Wintergreen, which is a little mountain outside of Charlottesville. And so we'd been looking for real estate up there because my husband was waking up at 4:00 in the morning to drive her to ski team practice at 7 before the mountain opened.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. We had been looking and, had exhausted all of our resources staying at friends' houses and, renting places as needed. But an auction came up for a house up in Wintergreen. And she had long gone off the ski team, and we kind of had moved on. But I was at a home inspection, and I texted my husband. I said, I want to bid on this auction. And he said, do it. So I'm sitting there, and of course, it's the moment where the home inspector is going over his report, and the termite moisture inspector is coming up to give us his thing, and the auction's going on, and I'm kind of bidding on it on the sly.
right. Termites, mm-hmm. Yeah, termites.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, all these, updates start flashing. The auction ends, and it says reserve not met, and then it said seller says sell, and it said you got it.
Wow!
You're going through this range of emotions.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I just bought a house that I've never seen, 3 hours away. I said, what am I doing? I would never let any of my clients do this. Right. I can't believe that I did this. There was a little piece of me that kind of used some of my real estate knowledge, which was that because it has an HOA, since they've since gone away with this law, but at the time you could not waive your right of rescission if you had an HOA. And so I said, if we go up there and it's a total mess, I can get out legally.
Right.
My husband and I packed up our kids and didn't tell them what we were doing, and they thought we were super weird. And we pulled into this house, and there's an old beater in the driveway. I mean, the agent had said, yes, of course, go look at it, no problem. There was a home inspection on it, so it wasn't like I was totally blind. But,
gotcha.
So they thought we were crazy. It was cool. We pulled in the neighborhood, and we saw a bear that was, walking around. Everybody's all excited, and we pull into this driveway. There's an old beater in there. I have a code to go in, and they're like, what are we doing? Whose house is this? Are we allowed to be here? All these things. And we started jumping up and down and said, we just bought it. They were excited. And it was a, real fun memory for all of them. And we looked around. It had polybutylene pipes. It had some water intrusion issues, so we knew we'd have to put some money into it to deal with some of these things. But all in all, it looked like a good house. And 4 years later, I think it's probably the best investment that I've ever made. So
Man, very nice. Yeah. But just the fear of like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
what did I do? Like, you were an absolute crazy person. I can't believe that I did that, and it paid off that time. But
I thought you were gonna say with the old beater in the driveway that like, oh yeah, there was like 9 squatters, and we had to,
it kind of looked like there may have been.
Like, oh boy. So,
No, I've walked into places that didn't know we were coming, and people holding up a blanket, don't come in.
yep.
Places that were a mess, and I mean, oh my gosh, some of the things that I've seen. Clients that have stepped in dog poop. One time I had I had 4. There was a whole family that came through, and every single one of them stepped in dog poop.
Oh my goodness!
And it was just like so I'm running around taking off their shoes and spraying them off, and that was awful.
Oh boy! Well, the life and times of an agent, that's for sure. Well, Kathryn, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. You did just an amazing job. I love your stories. I love the fact that your timing of getting in the business and what we're seeing now. So very timely for everybody and your journey. And just thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.